There are places that seem forgotten by time, not abandoned, not ruined, simply left behind. Places where the years collect like dust in forgotten corners, where old memories linger long after the people who created them have disappeared. Ravenshire Hotel was one of those places. The first time I saw it rain was falling across the Yorkshire countryside. A cold autumn rain, the kind that turns distant hills into shadows and makes the world feel older than it really is. I remember staring through the taxi window as the building emerged from the mist. Tall, narrow, Victorian. Its stone walls darkened by more than a century of weather. Warm yellow lights glowed behind several windows, but somehow the hotel still looked lonely, as though it had spent many years waiting for someone. My name is Ethan Brooks. I was 35 years old when I arrived at Ravenshire Hotel. At the time, I was supposed to be writing a novel. At least that's what I told everyone. The truth was far less impressive. I wasn't escaping writer's block. I was escaping my life. A year earlier, my marriage had ended. Not with shouting, not with betrayal. Those things might have been easier. Instead, it ended quietly. Two people gradually becoming strangers while pretending they still recognized one another. By the time my wife left, the silence between us had become larger than the love that once connected us. The divorce was civilized, polite, painful, the worst kind, because nobody could be blamed, and nobody could be forgiven. For months afterward, I wandered through life carrying a sadness I couldn't explain. Friends invited me out. I declined. Publishers asked about my next book. I lied. The truth was simple. I had lost the ability to hear my own thoughts. So I rented room 307 at Ravenshire Hotel and disappeared. Or at least I intended to. The receptionist was an elderly woman named Mrs. Finch. She greeted me with a smile that seemed genuine, the sort of smile people rarely wear anymore. Welcome to Ravenshire. Her voice carried the warmth of countless conversations. I signed the register. She handed me an old brass key. Not a plastic card, an actual key. Heavy, cold, attached to a polished wooden tag. 307. There you are, she said. The third floor. I took the key. Is the hotel busy? Mrs. Finch glanced around the empty lobby. Not particularly. The answer made me smile. That was exactly what I wanted. The third floor felt even older than the lobby. Long corridors stretched beneath dim yellow lights. Framed paintings lined the walls. Most depicted landscapes. Stormy coastlines. Dark forests. Lonely moors. Everything about Ravenshire seemed designed to encourage reflection or regret. Room 307 stood near the end of the hallway. The brass numbers gleamed softly beneath the light. I unlocked the door. The room was modest, but comfortable. A writing desk stood beside a large window overlooking the hills. A bookshelf occupied one wall. An armchair sat near the fireplace. Rain tapped gently against the glass. Perfect. Exactly the sort of place where a novelist was supposed to write. I unpacked slowly, placed my laptop on the desk, arranged notebooks, made coffee, then spent the next 3 hours staring at a blank page, not writing a single word. The problem wasn't ideas. The problem was feeling. Every story I tried to begin felt empty, artificial, lifeless, much like me. Eventually, darkness settled outside. The rain continued. I ordered dinner, read for an hour, then finally went to bed. Nothing unusual happened, at least not at first. I woke shortly after midnight. No sound had disturbed me, no nightmare, just a strange feeling. The sensation that something was different. The room remained dark. Rain whispered against the windows. Everything appeared normal. Then I noticed the envelope. It sat on the writing desk, directly beneath the lamp. I immediately sat upright. The envelope had not been there earlier. Of that I was absolutely certain. For several moments, I simply stared. The room suddenly felt colder. The envelope was cream-colored, old-fashioned, its edges slightly yellowed. Written across the front in elegant handwriting were 6 words. For the man in room 307. My heartbeat quickened. I climbed from bed, approached slowly. The handwriting looked unfamiliar, beautiful, careful, the kind of penmanship rarely seen anymore. I turned the envelope over. No seal, no sender, nothing. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper. The message contained only one sentence. "If you are reading this, please don't leave tonight." I read it 3 times, then a fourth. The simplicity of the words made them somehow more unsettling. No threat, no explanation, just a request. "Please don't leave tonight." I looked toward the door, then toward the window. The hills beyond were invisible in darkness. Rain continued falling. Nothing seemed unusual. Nothing except the letter itself. Eventually I convinced myself there must be a reasonable explanation. Perhaps a prank. Perhaps some bizarre hotel tradition. The following morning I carried the letter downstairs. Mrs. Finch listened carefully, then frowned. "You found this inside your room?" "Yes." Her confusion appeared genuine. "Who entered after I checked in?" "No one." "Someone must have." She shook her head slowly. "We don't have spare staff overnight." I placed the letter on the counter. "Then how did it get there?" Mrs. Finch examined the handwriting. For a brief moment, something changed in her expression. Recognition. It vanished almost immediately. "What is it?" I asked. She hesitated, then smiled politely. "I'm sure it's nothing." The answer satisfied neither of us. The second letter arrived the following night. This time I found it inside a closed notebook, one I had left on the desk. The envelope looked identical, the handwriting unchanged. Inside was another message. "You should lock the door before midnight." I stared at the words. A strange unease settled inside me. Not because the letter sounded threatening, because it sounded concerned, like advice. The third letter arrived 24 hours later, then a fourth, then a fifth, each appearing impossibly, each containing a single message. "Don't trust the silence. Keep the lamp on tonight. The hallway is safer after dawn." The letters knew things. Not future events exactly, but thoughts, fears, questions I had never spoken aloud. One night I spent hours debating whether to leave the hotel. The next letter simply said, "Stay one more day." By the 6th night I stopped asking how the letters appeared. Instead, I found myself waiting for them, looking forward to them, which should have frightened me more than it did. The truth was that loneliness makes people accept strange companionship, even impossible companionship, especially impossible companionship. The letters felt like conversations, the first meaningful conversations I had experienced in months. Then came the 7th night. The storm returned, worse than before. Wind howled against the building. Rain rattled every window. The old hotel creaked softly around me. I discovered the envelope beneath my pillow. For several moments I simply held it, my hands trembling slightly. Something felt different, heavier, more final. Slowly, I unfolded the paper. The message contained only 4 words. "Tomorrow you will see me." A chill spread through my body. I read the sentence again, and again. "Tomorrow you will see me." The certainty of it terrified me. Sleep became impossible. I remained awake until sunrise, listening to the storm, watching shadows move across the room, waiting. Morning finally arrived. Gray light filtered through the curtains. Exhausted, I stumbled toward the bathroom. The mirror above the sink was covered with condensation. At first I noticed nothing unusual. Then I froze. Words slowly emerged across the fogged glass, as though written by an invisible finger. My heartbeat stopped. I watched the letters form one by one. "I am already here." The message finished. The mirror fell silent. And for the first time since arriving at Ravenshire Hotel, I realized something horrifying. Whoever had been writing the letters was no longer outside room 307. They were already inside. I did not touch the mirror. For a long time I simply stood there, staring at the words. "I am already here." The letters remained visible on the fogged glass. Sharp, deliberate, as though written by an invisible hand only moments earlier. My heart hammered against my ribs. Every instinct told me to leave room 307 immediately. Pack my bags, walk downstairs, find the nearest train station. Forget Ravenshire Hotel ever existed. But fear is a strange thing. Sometimes it drives us away. Sometimes it pulls us closer. And somewhere beneath my fear was something stronger. Curiosity. The same curiosity that had once made me a writer. The same curiosity that had survived divorce, loneliness, and years of disappointment. Slowly, I reached toward the mirror. My fingers touched the glass. Cold. Perfectly ordinary. The message vanished instantly. Only my reflection remained. Pale, exhausted, confused. I looked older than 35. Grief does that. It steals years from your face. That morning I skipped breakfast. Instead, I went directly to the reception desk. Mrs. Finch looked up from a newspaper as I approached. Her expression changed immediately. "You look like you haven't slept." "I haven't." The elderly woman folded the newspaper carefully. What happened, I hesitated, then told her everything. The letters, the message in the mirror, the impossible appearances. For several moments, she remained silent, her eyes fixed somewhere beyond my shoulder, as though she were listening to a memory. Finally, she sighed. "I hoped it wouldn't happen again." The words sent a chill through me. "Again, Mrs." Finch nodded slowly. There was another guest. My pulse quickened. When? Many years ago. Who was he? The receptionist looked toward the old guest register behind the desk. His name was Oliver Hart. The name meant nothing to me, yet something in her voice suggested it should. He stayed in room 307, yes. What happened to him? A shadow crossed her face, the kind of expression people wear when discussing old tragedies. He disappeared. The lobby suddenly felt colder. "What do you mean disappeared? No luggage, no goodbye, no explanation." Her fingers tightened around the newspaper. One morning, he simply wasn't there. I stared at her. When was this? 1984. The answer lingered heavily between us. 40 years. 40 years without answers. The thought unsettled me more than I cared to admit. Did he receive letters? Mrs. Finch looked away. That alone was answer enough. Yes. I swallowed hard. The same letters. Her silence confirmed everything. That afternoon, I abandoned all thoughts of writing. Instead, I began researching Oliver Hart. The small town surrounding Ravenshire contained an excellent local archive. Old newspapers, public records, property documents. It didn't take long to find him. Oliver Hart, 38 years old, travel journalist. Checked into Ravenshire Hotel in October 1984. Never checked out. No body was found. No crime proven. Eventually, the investigation faded. Like so many unsolved mysteries, the world moved on. But I couldn't, because the deeper I looked, the stranger things became. One article included a photograph. Oliver stood beside a train station, smiling, holding a notebook, and beneath the image was his signature. My breath caught. The handwriting matched the letters exactly. Every curve, every line, every detail. I compared them repeatedly. There could be no mistake. The same hand had written both, which was impossible. Oliver Hart had vanished 40 years ago, yet someone was still writing letters using his handwriting. That evening, another envelope appeared, waiting on my desk, as though it had always been there. The paper inside contained only one sentence. "You are asking the right questions." I stared at the words. A cold sensation moved through me. Because the letter knew. Somehow it knew exactly what I had spent the day doing. Exactly what I had discovered. Exactly what I was thinking. The realization should have terrified me. Instead, it made me feel strangely less alone, which frightened me even more. The following nights became increasingly unsettling. I began seeing someone in the hallway. Always at the far end. Always after midnight. A man. Tall, thin, wearing a dark coat. The moment I approached, he vanished. Not ran, not turned a corner. Vanished. Like fog dissolving beneath sunlight. The first time it happened, I blamed exhaustion. The second time, I blamed imagination. By the third occurrence, excuses became impossible. The figure was real, or real enough. One night I followed him. The corridor stretched endlessly beneath dim Victorian lamps. The stranger stood near the final window, motionless, watching the storm outside. "Excuse me," I called. No response. I moved closer. The man remained still. Another step, then another. The distance slowly closed. 20 feet, 10 feet, 5. Finally, he turned. My heart stopped. The face belonged to Oliver Hart, exactly as he appeared in the newspaper photograph. Older, perhaps. Sadder, but unmistakably Oliver. Before I could speak, the lights flickered. Darkness swallowed the corridor. Only for a second. When illumination returned, the hallway was empty. The figure had vanished, leaving only silence behind. That night, I discovered something new. The latest envelope contained a key. Small, rust-covered, ancient. No note, no explanation, only the key. The following day, I searched Ravenshire Hotel from top to bottom. Storage rooms, unused offices, locked cabinets. Nothing matched. Then shortly before sunset, Mrs. Finch approached me. Without speaking, she handed me an old leather journal. "What is this? It belonged to Oliver." My pulse quickened immediately. "Where did you get it?" "He left it behind." I opened the journal carefully. Dust rose from the pages. The first entries seemed ordinary. Travel notes, observations, descriptions of weather and landscapes. Then the tone changed. October 12th, 1984. I found the first letter. October 15th. Another letter appeared. October 18th. The letters know things. My heartbeat accelerated. The words mirrored my own experience perfectly. Page after page described the same impossible events, the same envelopes, the same warnings, the same growing obsession. Then I reached the final, completed entry. October 31st. The handwriting looked rushed, uneven, fearful. "I finally know where the door is." The sentence ended there. No further explanation. No next page. Nothing. Only blank paper. I stared at the unfinished entry. The door. What door? Hours passed as I searched the remaining pages. Eventually something slipped from between them. A folded piece of paper. Unlike the others. Older. Yellowed. Written in the same handwriting. Oliver's handwriting. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. The message contained only one sentence. The door was never meant to be opened. Thunder exploded outside the hotel. The sound shook the windows. And at that exact moment, something happened. A noise echoed through Ravenshire. A deep, metallic groan. Old hinges moving. Somewhere upstairs. The sound lasted only seconds. Yet every person inside the hotel seemed to hear it. I rushed into the corridor. Guests emerged from their rooms. Confused. Concerned. Mrs. Finch appeared at the staircase. Her face pale. She already knew. Without speaking, she pointed toward the far end of the fourth floor. Toward a section of the hotel that had been locked for decades. A place no guest ever visited. A place hidden behind faded wallpaper and forgotten memories. At the end of the corridor stood a door. An ancient wooden door, one I had never seen before, because until that moment, it had never been open. Now it stood wide, waiting, and somehow deep inside my heart, I knew exactly who had opened it. The open door waited at the end of the fourth floor corridor. No one moved. The guests who had stepped from their rooms stood frozen beneath the dim lights, whispering nervously among themselves. Mrs. Finch remained near the staircase, one hand pressed against the banister, as if the old building itself were the only thing keeping her upright. The door was narrow, ancient. Its dark wood looked warped by age and moisture. Until that night, I would have sworn no such door existed. The corridor should have ended at a blank wall, a faded wallpaper pattern, a small table holding dead flowers. But now there it was, open, breathing darkness. I knew with a certainty I could not explain that Oliver Hart had led me there, not to harm me, not to frighten me, to be found. I took the rusted key from my pocket, the same one that had appeared in the envelope. It felt cold in my palm, far colder than metal should have felt. "Mrs." Finch spoke softly behind me. "Mr. Brooks." I turned. Her eyes were wet. "You don't have to go in." I looked at the open doorway, then at her. "Yes," I said. "I think I do." The air changed the moment I stepped inside. The temperature dropped sharply. Behind me, the corridor lights flickered. Before me stretched a narrow passageway hidden behind the hotel's walls. Dust covered everything. The ceiling sloped low. Old pipes ran along one side. The passage seemed less like architecture and more like something the hotel had grown around. Forgotten, sealed, ashamed. I switched on my phone light and moved forward. Each step stirred dust from the floor. The silence inside the walls felt different from ordinary silence. It felt preserved, like a room beneath glass. A few feet ahead, the passage turned sharply. At the corner stood a small wooden door. This one was locked. I already knew what to do. The rusted key entered the lock perfectly. For one suspended second, nothing happened. Then the mechanism clicked. Loud. Final. The door opened inward. The smell that escaped nearly forced me backward. Old air. Damp wood. Dust. Decay. And beneath it all, something heartbreakingly human. Loneliness. The hidden room beyond was small, barely larger than a storage cupboard. A collapsed section of plaster blocked part of the floor. There were no windows. No furniture except for a broken chair and a rotting trunk. Against the far wall lay a human skeleton. For several seconds, I simply stood there, unable to breathe, unable to move. The remains wore the decayed fragments of a dark coat. Beside, one hand rested a leather notebook. Oliver's notebook, the last one. My legs weakened. 40 years. For 40 years he had been here. Not vanished, not escaped, not mysterious. Here, only a few feet from the rooms filled with guests. Only a few feet from laughter, conversations, footsteps, breakfasts, departures, arrivals. The whole world had continued around him, while he remained trapped inside the walls. I knelt carefully. My hands trembled as I picked up the notebook. The cover was brittle, the pages fragile. The first half contained frantic writing. Oliver had discovered the hidden passage while investigating rumors about Ravenshire Hotel. A renovation accident years earlier had sealed parts of the old structure. He believed there were forgotten rooms behind the walls. He was right. Then came the final entries. The handwriting became uneven. Desperate. October 31st, 1984. The door has jammed behind me. I have shouted until my throat burns. No one can hear me. November 1st. There must be another way out. There has to be. November 2nd. I can hear them in the corridor. People walking past. People laughing. I am so close to them. So impossibly close. November 3rd. If anyone finds this, tell my sister I did not leave her. Tell her I tried to come home. The final page contained only one line. Please listen. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Until that moment, I had believed the letters were part of some haunting, a mystery, a horror. But the truth was unbearably simple. Oliver Hart had not wanted revenge. He had not wanted to scare me. He had wanted someone to listen, someone to hear what no one had heard. In 1984, I called for help. The next hours passed in fragments. Police, paramedics, hotel staff, guests standing pale-faced in corridors, Mrs. Finch crying silently near the staircase. The remains were removed before dawn. The hidden room was sealed for investigation. Ravenshire Hotel, which had carried its secret quietly for 40 years, finally had to speak. News spread quickly. Oliver Hart's disappearance had been one of those local mysteries people whispered about for decades. Now it had an ending. A terrible one, but an ending nonetheless. His sister was still alive, old now, living in a coastal village in Devon. When she was told what had happened, she traveled to Ravenshire within days. Her name was Margaret Hart. She arrived with a cane, white hair and eyes that had spent 40 years waiting. I met her in the lobby. She held Oliver's notebook against her chest as though it were part of him. He didn't run away, she said. Her voice trembled. Everyone told me he must have, that perhaps he wanted another life. I shook my head. He tried to come home. Margaret closed her eyes. A tear slid down her cheek. Thank you. I wanted to tell her I had done nothing, that Oliver had done everything, that he had pulled me through loneliness, fear, and disbelief until I stood exactly where he needed me. But I said nothing. Some grief deserves silence. Oliver Hart was buried 2 weeks later. The funeral took place beneath a gray English sky. Small, quiet, dignified. Margaret stood beside the grave. Mrs. Finch attended. So did I. As the coffin was lowered, wind moved gently through the cemetery. For one brief moment, I thought I heard paper rustling, the sound of a letter being opened. Perhaps I imagined it, perhaps not. After the funeral, I returned to Ravenshire Hotel. Part of me expected to leave immediately. My work there was finished. My novel remained unwritten. My life still waited somewhere beyond those rain-streaked windows. Yet something had changed. I no longer felt quite so hollow. Oliver's story had broken something open inside me. Not painfully, gently. He had spent 40 years waiting for someone to listen. I had spent a year refusing to listen to myself. That night, I returned to room 307 one final time. The room looked ordinary. The writing desk, the old lamp, the window overlooking the hills. No envelopes, no messages, no footsteps, only silence. For the first time, the silence felt peaceful. I packed my suitcase, slowly. Before leaving, I placed my hand on the desk where the first letter had appeared. "Goodbye, Oliver," I whispered. The words felt strange, but right. Then I saw it. A final envelope, resting on the pillow, cream-colored, old-fashioned, exactly like the others. My breath caught. For several seconds, I could not move. Then I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, only 4 words. "Thank you for listening." I sat on the bed and cried. Not from fear, not from sadness alone, but from something I had forgotten how to feel. Release. The next morning I checked out of Ravenshire Hotel. Mrs. Finch stood behind the desk. She looked older somehow, but lighter too. "Will you finish your book?" she asked. I smiled. For the first time in months, the answer felt honest. Yes. The third-floor window of room 307 reflected the morning sky. For a moment, I thought I saw a man standing there, tall, thin, wearing a dark coat. Oliver Hart. He raised one hand, a quiet farewell. Then, the window was empty. Months later, I finished the novel. Not the one I had planned to write. Something better, something true. A story about loneliness, about forgotten voices, about the terrible human need to be heard. I dedicated it to Oliver Hart, and to everyone who ever waited in silence for someone to listen, because some ghosts do not ask to be saved. Some do not want revenge. Some are not trying to haunt us at all. They are only knocking softly from the forgotten rooms of the world, hoping someone will finally open the door.